Hello and welcome back to my Kerbal Space Program NASA series reboot. Picking up where we left off many months ago with our intrepid crew stuck in an eccentric orbit around Minmus after several repeated brain farts on my part. Pretty much made the lander vehicle incapable of A, staying on Kerbin's smallest satellite, and even, returning with enough fuel load. If I had had Hermes in a lower orbit, would have been a much better deal, but I think I was just too lazy and was not really in the mood to adjust the orbit that much, because Hermes is a very slow accelerating spacecraft, and so this is pretty much my laziness getting the better of me. There's really no excusing that my behavior here. Thankfully, Hermes itself is capable of autonomous remote operation, and so we have flipped it onto AI guidance mode to try and bring the orbit a little closer to that of the return vehicle. Now, the lander is actually orbit. As far as the orbit goes, the crew is perfectly safe, but since it's been quite a while since I've had another one of those videos out, I think a reminder would be in order that it actually has very little electrical power and no capability of generating said electrical energy. So the crew actually is in a fair bit of danger here. I basically have to get this on my first shot, or else by the time I'm ready, I can pull another rendezvous off. The battery will have long gone down, and the crew will have frozen to death inside their capsule. Thankfully, around Minmus, and wow, that's a pretty rapid orbital change. There is literally no excuse for what I did here. So basically, I'm just going to brute force this and burn until they get a decent maneuver. There's still enough RCS fuel left on the lander that it can make the rendezvous, but I really didn't want to waste all of that, because if the lander had completely run out of RCS, I'm very doubtful I could have maneuvered Hermes' bulk gently and precisely enough to actually make a successful docking. With that rather imprecise burn, I'm able to get a rendezvous by dropping below the lander's periaps in order to make a rendezvous in a single orbit, which is a huge time saver. I was really down to the wire on this one because, like I said, it's not critical danger, but really needed to expedite this process as much as I could, because they were definitely running low on electrical power, or would have been if I had messed this up. A little judicious use of time warp to sit out for the boring parts, which this video is largely going to be about the maneuver, rescue, and return of the crew. Really not a whole lot going on, but I do have something special at the end, which I've been waiting for quite some time. Getting a nice close approach lined up with Kerbin hanging just above the sun. I'm sorry, but my voice slurs so much over the audio that there's no way to tell whether I'm saying Kerbal or Kerbal unless I over-enunciate the O in the fan name for the sun. So I'm just calling it the sun, and will continue to do so until the heat death of the universe. One of the downsides I found is that, and I may have touched on this before the last time I tried this, is that without that lander on board Hermes, the whole structure gets a little wobbly. It's not a deal breaker, but I definitely have to work something out on that. Our Duna launch window is actually quite a ways out, and there's a few deficiencies I'd like to correct in the Hermes before then. I think I'm going to split it straight down the middle and put some more life support where those huge 3.75 meter docking ports are, or 2.5 meter, I'm sorry. Just because I've run this in sandbox mode, and Hermes has enough life support to get to Duna and back, provided everything goes absolutely perfectly. And in real life, spacecraft are not designed with a very large margin of error. However, the more mods I've loaded into this game, and just Kerbal Physics again in general, once again, this is 0.24.2 version, 64-bit. So they get a little wonky, and maneuvers and everything tend to change once you start messing with time warp. So I'd like some extra fudge factor in here. Just rather overbuild it, because honestly, this is a massive spacecraft. What's a little bit of extra mass? It's not going to hurt my Delta V capacity that much, but it will generally improve the odds of me getting my crew back alive, which is kind of a bonus if you're going to launch a manned mission somewhere. It's always nice to bring your crew back alive. As far as I think I touched on this earlier actually I think I only touched this in my ARMA video. I was not able to get my internship back out for my engineering internship. There were a couple things that happened, chiefly among them, and it's kind of painful to talk about this, is that my best friend who got me that internship in the first place tragically died in a motorcycle accident in the beginning of May, and with everything going on, it was going to be a bridge too far to get me back on. They're hopeful they'll bring me back for next year, but this summer I have been spending my time kind of doing what I know. I've gotten back into classic car restoration, got quite a few projects that I'm handling on my own, and keeping myself generally busy, but really I'm making my own hours, and I think I've kind of come out of that grieving period. And I don't really want to use this video to get like too deep and too personal, but there's a bunch of just boring junk going on around here. I've kind of come out of that grieving period, and I'm kind of ready to get back to my Kerbal videos, and mainly because all these cool updates that are coming out, 1.1, and all the bug fixes that are coming out with that, I have not been able to play with 1.1 or any of the later updates, hardly any. And I've noticed some of my favorite mods have started to get re-updated for it. Breaks my heart to say, but it doesn't look like Better Atmospheres is going to be coming back, if ever. But I was really, really excited to see that B9 Aerospace has been updated. It appeared to be a community workaround, but I don't want to speak out of turn. I was only on the forum for a very brief period of time, and if Back 9 and everybody have come back to that project, yay. But otherwise, it was community fix, which is what I think it was, if I read that correctly. All hail the mighty community for bringing one of the best mods back up to par. I literally will not build a large rover unless I can use that B9 cockpit. It is just the perfect sci-fi heavy rover, command pod, in my opinion. So there are a couple others that I've been looking at that, like I said, the follow-on to this one, I really want it to be kind of a low-tech colonization style playthrough. Not like... Honestly, I don't think the game would support the scale of a full sci-fi, colonization playthrough. That'd be incredible if it did, but physics in this game get a little... and the frame rate gets hammered bad enough, just with these massive spaceships. So, but my next playthrough is going to be kind of an unofficial sequel to this. I don't think Near Future has been updated in a while. I could be wrong, but as I've said, I've been kind of out of the world for the past couple months, so I'm dipping my toes back in, trying to knock the rust off, and just kind of get back into the swing of things. So I got a lot of research to do before I start fully setting up and planning my next playthrough. First, I got to finish this one, which is going to be a minor miracle when I finally pull that off. I think there will be party hats on that day. Until then, you guys are stuck watching this interminably long docking process, because, let's face it, I really didn't have a whole lot of footage recorded, and so this is kind of getting spaced out a bit. But the docking process to rejoin this thing with Hermes, especially with those two struts on the other side, and the steerable antenna I've got on there that can get in the way, there's really only the one way to approach reuniting the lander, or in my MAV design, or I'm sorry, the Duna ascent vehicle that I've got designed, not the MAV, for anybody who has seen The Martian, which I think is kind of hilarious. I first started this playthrough talking about how my Duna mission was going to be based on the novel The Martian, and I honestly think what they did pre-production, shooting, production, theatrical release, and Blu-ray DVD release, plus a year in the time that I've been trying to get this finished. So I am definitely way off the pace here. And a lot of it was I wasted so much time just flying airplanes around and filming it and goofing off that. But really getting down to the nitty gritty, I'm gonna get that Duna mission. If I've got to time warp my way to the window, I just really want to make sure Hermes is capable of it, and I want to get all the habitats, the rovers, and all the pre-supplies sent, landed, and oriented the way I want before I kick Hermes out to Duna. What's worrying me is that it's been so long since I've actually played this in a serious kind of hardcore fashion, is that I am terrified that I'm just not going to be able to get the proper rendezvous with Duna, because with its inclination change, there are a lot of things that I do not fully understand perfectly about the home and transfer orbit out to Duna. Because sometimes I hit it and it's just perfect, and then other times I'm coming in completely retrograde and need a 3,000 meters per second delta V burn just to, not fly past it. So I gotta find out what I'm screwing up there. In case anybody was wondering, that video I did for my lab, we actually, I finally found out what had been going wrong with our group. And what it was is that I was given a mass value for the space shuttle. I was giving a thrust value for the OMS systems, and we had to figure out our burn time. And we basically just had to figure out the burn time to circularize an orbit. He did not make us do a full rendezvous with the space station. My team actually had a mishap, and I never actually got the chance. We didn't get the chance to do the burn because as I was selected as pilot, or I kind of appointed myself pilot just because that's my strong suit. And what I found is that when it was my turn to launch, to actually initiate the burn, I had no throttle response. I was using my professor's Cytec X52, which is the descendant of my, venerable old X45 that I've had for almost 20... Geez, this thing came out in 2000... Okay, 11 years, not 20 years. I've had this thing for almost 11 years now. Or 12, I'm sorry. But I had no throttle response off of it. And so that freaked me out. And we had quick saved right before the burn. And so we had to troubleshoot things. And I noticed that none of the lights on the throttle quadrant were actually turning on. And so that got me thinking. I unplugged it. And in his haste to set up the computer, my professor had actually accidentally plugged the wire for the throttle in crooked, and it had bent a pin. So I had to take some time with some hand tools and stuff and straighten that out and save the flight stick before I could even try the burn. And what we kept running into was everybody was calculating these burn times, and we were getting 3 minutes or so for a burn, and it was like 125 to 150 meters per second burn time, which is that's actually pretty close because the space shuttle only had a 300 or so meters per second delta V budget on OMS. So I beat my head against this equation, the one I had in my video, for well over a week because of the technical difficulties. We technically failed the lab, and the way to save your grade was to write pretty much an after action what went wrong report with the correct burn times calculated. And so after a week of smashing my head against this equation, I finally started asking the questions I should have been asking along. Is we're making a lot of assumptions here. Are my assumptions correct? And I looked at the value we'd been given for the mass of the space shuttle, and we were given 74,800 kilograms for the mass of the space shuttle. And in this scenario, in Orbiter 2010, the shuttle actually has a payload on board, and I believe it has the ISS docking collar on it too. And so that's pretty significant mass. And so I started poking around, doing some research, and we had the OMS system thrust correct. I actually went to NASA's data sheet for the space shuttle to get that correct, to make sure it was correct. And I was still really dense. I wasn't thinking things through, and I was like, well, geez, I've got because I ran the same scenario in Orbiter on my computer, fully automated, and I got like a 5-minute, 5-second burn time that correct for the computer to do the burn. And so with the delta V equation, it started thinking, and I was like, I've got 305 seconds for a burn time. So that's my delta T. I also have my delta V, which is about 100, I think it was 135 meters per second is what I had. And I also have my thrust. And that was when I felt like the biggest idiot, because the only value left was the given value for the space shuttle. And so I went looking around, and I found out that the space shuttle's dry service weight was 78,000 kilograms. Which means like no crew, no life support, no systems whatsoever on board this thing. It weighed a hair over what was our given value for the flight. So I did some more research, and I reverse engineered that equation because I had my 3 known values, and I just put my mass as my unknown and kind of ran the equation backwards. And I got a total mass of the shuttle at that point as 89,540 kilograms or something like that. And through that, I found out that I did some more research, and the space shuttle's maximum landing weight was 100,000 kilograms. So I was like, I'm feeling pretty good about this. So we, after calculating all that, I plugged in that 89,000 whatever kilogram value into all my different burn calculations, and I was getting them exact down to the second. And that's when it dawned on me that I had been doing it correct, because in my video that I did with Kerbal Space Program, Kerbal Flight Engineer gave me a correct mass value at all times. We were all starting with a bad mass value, so there was no way we were going to get our calculations correct. After substituting that in and putting that in my report, I ended up getting an A on that lab, which I was pretty proud of, because let's be honest, I've worked as a mechanic my entire life. I have never, until I started college, I never thought I could be good at math of any sort. And to be able to pass Engineering Physics 1 with an A was a pretty big deal for me. Kind of tying back to what I was talking about previously, though, I did fail my Calculus 2 class. I had a low B in that for this semester, and the final was going to make me or break me. My friend had his motorcycle accident the day before my final. I'm 100% convinced I could have passed this class, but I came in for that final, and I was pretty much a wreck. I wasn't able to focus. I did go in to take it because I wasn't going to give up, but I completely blew it. Because of some issues with my mother's health and some other things I've been dealing with in my own personal life, my calculus professor, I've taken several classes with him, and he told me that for this semester, if I were to somehow fail the class or have to withdraw after the mandatory final withdrawal date, if I messed up badly enough, he was going to switch it to a incomplete or an administrative withdrawal, an AW, so that it would preserve my GPA. And he ended up doing that for me, and I am extremely grateful. But I'm going to be going back to Calculus 2 in the fall semester, and I don't think it's going to be a problem at all. I know the material, but life really felt like it needed to kick me pretty hard beginning of this summer. And so that's where I am and where I have been for these past several weeks. If there anybody even still watching my videos, that's kind of my explanation for my extended disappearance. This is all pretty much reuniting the Hermes with my 2 Soyuz craft that are in orbit. And I know I'm coming off really scatterbrained in this video because just it's been a rough year, and so trying to keep my head straight on a lot of this stuff has been, you know, a lot of fun. But bringing Hermes back together with the Soyuz so we can finally bring the crew home and take some of that science, that sweet, sweet science that we picked up at Minmus. Just burning on... Actually, that was burning the engines to get that rendezvous. So we get to do this dance once again. I'm really, as much as I love this Soyuz design, I'm hoping by the time I'm going to Duna, I'm hoping I can have something that'll fly the full crew up in one flight, just to avoid this. I would really like for my VentureStar to find a way to put some crew cans on it that I can have full crew and a pilot, so I can actually bring VentureStar back down and not have the return vehicles in a constant orbit waiting for them to come back. Because realistically, that wouldn't... Space Agency would not do that, because that would be... If we use Mars as the example, the return craft would have to spend over 4 years in space. And there is no guarantee, and I think there's very little chance, because space is such a harsh environment as far as radiation and the huge heat swings from daylight to nighttime. So it's very unlikely that you could put a manned craft up there for 4 years with nobody on board to take care of systems and upgrade them like the ISS has. Because honestly, the ISS is constantly being rebuilt. After every flight, new parts and equipment are coming up constantly to keep it in the shape it's in. So I'd really like to get VentureStar rigged up to where she can bring up all 6 of the Duna crew and then come back to Earth and do whatever while they're en route. Just because that's... I want to keep this, again, semi-realistic. And so with the return of that crew, I am finally able to unlock aerospace tech. We're getting into the very final tiers of the tech tree here, and I'm really not so interested in all the techs I can unlock. I'm really more interested in the journey at this stage. I just want to get the parts I need to complete the equipment I need. And so by unlocking that final piece, VentureStar is finally ready to come online. I'm going to do one last service mission to the Hubble with the shuttle, and then that whole program will be retiring. So thank you very much for putting up with me, and stay safe.